Hi, welcome to an introduction to static routing presented by Robinson Ono and Tyler Schultz. If you'd like a more in-depth look into the information, please view Chapter 7, pages 187 to 191 in your CCNA book, as well as from the sources in the works cited at the end of the presentation. Thanks and enjoy. Static routing is a form of routing that occurs when a router uses a manually configured routing entry rather than information from a dynamic routing table. Here are some things to understand about static routing. Static routes, which define explicit paths between two routers, cannot be automatically updated. You must manually reconfigure static routes when network changes occur. Static routes use less bandwidth than dynamic routes. No CPU cycles are used to calculate and analyze routing updates. You should use static routes in environments where network traffic is predictable and where the network design is simple. You should not use static routes in large, constantly changing networks because static routes cannot react to network changes. Most networks use dynamic routes to communicate between routers, but might have one or two static routes configured for special cases. Considered a preferred route, static routing involves a much lower default metric than routes learned by dynamic routing. Some networks may have only one route out and therefore can be configured with a single static route. This is known as a stub router. Networks with one route out to the internet are known as stub networks. Please view the slide for the proper syntax utilized by the network administrator for the IP route command. Although static routing gives the administrator full control as to how packets will be routed, the disadvantage of using static routing is the initial manual configuration and the possible reconfiguration if routes are changed.
So administrative distance, what that is it is a value used to determine the reliability and desirability of a particular routing table update. As you can see to the right of that, we have all the default administrative distances for each of the routing protocols and statically configured. So what exactly it is used by the router when you have when there are two or more different routes trying to go to the same destination from one source. It selects the best route uh, to get you to your destination. When you are adding it in the router, all you have to do is when you enter the IP route command, at the end of that, after you type in your destination route and its subnet mask, you have to add the number at the very end. If you don't do that, it automatically sets it to just 1 is the default administrative distance. Also, if you are using static routing as a backup configured for to your dynamic routing, when you set the administrative distance for the statically configured IP route, you have to make sure that it is higher than the dynamic routing administrative distance. Default routes. It is a static route that directs all traffic not specified anywhere else in the routing table to a particular route. Same as a quad 0 route. So default route, examples of when you would use that is if you were on a kind of a smaller statically configured network, maybe 2 or 3 routers, some client host machines, and you have one gateway router that gets you to the internet. What a default route is if you are trying to resolve or look up an IP address that is not in any of your router's addressing tables, it automatically knows to just pass that to the default route, and that will, it automatically knows that it goes off to the internet, or it's not in your within your network. Default routes are also called quad zero routes, as I mentioned in the previous slide. Um, it is really only used when there isn't an existing route to a network in your routing table. When you're going to configure the default route in your routers, the commands you're going to want to use is either you can do IP default dash network and then the IP address of the default route you're going to do, or you can use the IP root 0.0.0 space 0.0.0.0 space, and then also enter the IP address of the default route that you're trying to set up.